Rain hammered the city like a curse. Headlights bled across the wet asphalt, the world a blur of water and glass. A black sedan veered, tires slicing through the slick. A moment later, impact. Metal screamed, the guardrail buckled, and the car tumbled out of sight beneath the overpass. Under the bridge, Maya Harlow startled awake. For an instant she thought it was thunder, until she saw the flash of firelight and heard a faint groan. Her pulse quickened. Crashes meant sirens. Sirens meant trouble. But the sound that followed, one sharp gasp, then silence, pushed her forward. She sprinted toward the wreck, breath ragged, shoes slapping through puddles. The sedan was a mangled skeleton of steel and smoke. She yanked at the handle until it tore free, choking on fumes. Inside, a man hung half-conscious against the airbag, blood streaking his cheek. "Hey," she shouted. "Can you hear me?" His eyelids fluttered. He coughed once, voice cracked and disoriented. "Help, please." She unbuckled him, braced her legs, and dragged his weight out just as the dashboard sparked. He tried to speak again, only a rasp. She caught fragments. "My phone, wife," before his head dropped against her shoulder. "Stay with me," she whispered, lowering him onto the slick pavement. "Don't close your eyes." He blinked up at her through the rain, trying to focus. For a heartbeat, their eyes met, hers wide with fear, his dim with fading awareness. Then his body went limp. Maya pressed her hands to his chest. "No, no, no. Don't you die on me." 1, 2, 3. She counted under her breath, pushing hard, just like she'd seen in videos. She tilted his chin, gave 2 breaths, went back to compressions. Her arms burned, but she didn't stop. Distant sirens began to rise, slicing through the storm. She didn't hear them. All she saw was his face turning pale, the rain washing streaks of soot from his hair. "Come on, breathe." The man coughed, a wet, desperate sound. A pulse stuttered beneath her fingers. Relief flooded her, half sobs, half laughter. "That's it. Just breathe." Then, tires screeching, doors slamming, shouts cutting through the night. "Step back from the victim." She turned, startled, hands still on his chest. "I'm helping him." "Ma'am, move away now." An officer grabbed her wrist, pulling her back. Another kneeled beside the man. "He's got a pulse." She did that, the younger cop said softly. Rain poured harder. Maya stood there trembling, watching as paramedics lifted the man she'd just saved, onto a stretcher. His hand twitched once, almost reaching toward her, then fell away as the doors slammed shut. In the gutter, the car's shattered mirror caught her reflection under flashing lights. One face blurred with rain and smoke, the rescuer mistaken for the threat. The storm eased by dawn, leaving the city scrubbed and cold. At the corner shelter, people were already huddling for breakfast, paper cups of coffee, government bread. An old TV buzzed in the background. On screen, the headline read, "Billionaire Ethan Ward survives crash. Quick response by police and EMTs saves life." Maya froze, watching her own absence. A reporter smiled, voice bright. "The city's emergency teams acted swiftly to rescue Mr. Ward from the wreckage." She whispered to no one, "Yeah, real swift." A volunteer noticed her watching. "You know him?" Maya shrugged. "Not really. Just met him on a bad night." She tore off a piece of bread and stared out the window, the rain now soft and steady. In her pocket, she turned something over and over between her fingers, a cufflink she hadn't realized she'd pulled from his sleeve while dragging him out. It gleamed faintly, etched with the company logo, Ward Global. Across town, high above the skyline she'd drawn 1,000 times, Ethan Ward lay in a hospital bed under white light. He woke to the soft beeping of monitors and the faint hum of air conditioning. For a moment, he thought he was dreaming, a girl's voice echoing through rain, pressing the word breathe into his chest. Then came pain, ribs tight, throat raw. His assistant, Andrew, leaned over him. You're lucky, sir. They said you were minutes from hypoxia. Ethan blinked. Who pulled me out? Andrew hesitated. Unclear. Paramedics found you on the pavement. Probably a passerby. She was young, Ethan said, closing his eyes, trying to hold the image. Dark hair. I remember her voice. Andrew glanced at his tablet. No ID at the scene. The police released someone, but there's no record. Probably homeless. Ethan turned his head toward the window. Outside, the morning sky glowed faintly pink, the city already alive again. He felt a strange mix of gratitude and unease. Gratitude for the breath in his lungs, unease for the silence that followed it. Find her, he said finally. I want to thank her. Andrew paused. Sir, PR says it's best not to complicate the story right now. They're drafting a statement. Find her, Ethan repeated, his voice a rasp of authority. Before the story finds her first. In the shelter, the TV flickered to an image of Ethan Ward smiling weakly from his hospital bed. Maya watched for a long time, then dropped the cufflink into her pocket and whispered, Too late. Before we continue, if you believe every story deserves its real hero, tap, like, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. It helps more people see stories that remind us what humanity looks like. 3 days after the crash, Ethan Ward returned home, or rather, to what people called home, a glass penthouse floating above the city. From his balcony, the streets below looked like moving veins of light. Orderly, predictable, controlled, exactly the way he liked life to be. But that night, when the wind hit the windows just right, he still heard rain and the faint echo of her voice. Breathe. He called Andrew. Any progress? On the girl. Yes, on the girl. Andrew sighed. We've checked hospitals, shelters, police reports. Nothing. No one by that name or description. Ethan rubbed his temple. So she just vanished. Sir, Andrew said carefully, people like her don't vanish. They're invisible to begin with. Ethan didn't respond. He walked to his desk, where the cufflink she'd pulled from his sleeve lay beside his watch. A police officer had returned it earlier that day. Only now did he notice something strange, a smudge of black soot shaped like a fingerprint. He touched it and felt a chill he couldn't explain. Across the river, in a shelter that smelled faintly of bleach and wet clothes, Maya sat cross-legged on a cot, sketching a bridge in charcoal. The volunteer supervisor passed behind her. You got a real gift, kid. Ever think of putting those drawings to work? She smiled without looking up. I did once. The company folded. He chuckled. What company? She pointed with her pencil at a sign outside the window. Ward Global Construction. Building the future. Later that evening, Ethan's private investigator arrived. The kind of man who always wore dark suits and carried files in leather folders. I traced the traffic camera footage, he said, sliding a tablet across the table. This girl pulled you from the wreck before first responders arrived. Ethan leaned in. The video was grainy, rain streaking the lens, but there she was, a thin figure dragging him from the smoke. Her hair plastered to her face, arms shaking with effort. She saved me, he said quietly. The investigator nodded. Her name's Maya Harlow. Age 18. No fixed address. Dropped out of public school 3 years ago. Father. He hesitated, then flipped open a page. Victor Harlow, foreman at Ward Global. Died in the 2014 Eastbridge collapse. Ethan stared at the file as if it had caught fire. That's impossible. The Harlow case was closed. Settlement paid, records sealed, the man replied. But there was a daughter. The report listed her as a minor. No further trace. For a long moment, Ethan said nothing. The only sound was the low hum of the city below. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. She saved the man who signed off on her father's death. The investigator shifted uncomfortably. Sir, you need to be careful. If this connection gets out. Ethan cut him off. Don't worry about the company. Sir, with respect. I said don't worry about the company. Across town, Maya looked up at the bridge she was sketching, the same one that had collapsed 10 years ago. Under the drawing, she wrote a single line. Some bridges weren't meant to hold lies forever. Ethan stared at the file one last time. Beneath Victor Harlow's faded photo was a child's crayon drawing of a bridge, bright, uneven, signed in the corner, Maya, age 8. He whispered the name as if it were a debt. Maya Harlow. The conference room on the 42nd floor felt colder than usual. Outside, the city pulsed with movement. But in here, time seemed frozen. A table of executives staring at a man they weren't sure how to manage anymore. Ethan Ward stood at the head of the table, pale but composed. The scar on his temple caught the light as he spoke. She has a name, he said flatly. Maya Harlow. 18. She saved my life. Across from him, the PR chief, Lydia Klein, flipped through her notes. Sir, with respect, that's not the story the public needs. We've already released a statement crediting first responders. Ethan's gaze sharpened. A lie. Lydia smiled tightly. A simplification. For clarity. Next to her, the head of legal cleared his throat. If we bring her into this publicly, we open old wounds and old files. The Harlow collapse was ruled accidental, but the optics. Ethan interrupted. The optics of what? A girl doing what my company should have done years ago. A silence spread through the room. The kind that feels like a test no one wants to take. Lydia broke it first. Sir, I understand your emotions, but the public doesn't respond well to mixed messaging. A billionaire saved by the daughter of a dead worker? That's not redemption, that's irony. And irony kills markets. Ethan stared at her, disbelief giving way to a quiet fury. She saved me, he said again, slower this time. She pulled me out of fire and gave me air. And you're worried about markets. Mr. Ward, the legal counsel said gently, we're trying to protect you. And her. If her name resurfaces, every outlet will dig up her father's death. She'll be hounded, branded, used. Is that what you want? Ethan looked away, jaw tight. No, that's not what I want. Then let us handle it, Lydia said, her voice soft but practiced. Keep her anonymous. You can help her privately if it eases your conscience. He turned back toward the glass wall. The skyline glittered like a lie, his empire standing on the shoulders of men like Victor Harlow. I don't want privacy, he said quietly. I want truth. Lydia shut her folder. Truth isn't a currency we trade in, sir. Not when it costs billions. The room fell silent again. Somewhere behind him, a phone buzzed, the low hum of a world already moving on. Ethan's reflection stared back at him in the glass. Clean suit, neat scar, empty eyes. He almost didn't recognize the man who'd been dragged bleeding out of a wreck by a girl society wouldn't look twice at. As he left the room, Lydia turned to the others. Delete every file with her name, she said. If she stays invisible, we all survive. But in the reflection of the closing elevator doors, Ethan's face was unreadable, not defeated, not convinced, just dangerous. The nights under the bridge always smelled the same. Rain, rust, and something like burnt oil. Maya had learned to stop noticing it. The city hummed above her like a living thing. People laughing, cars moving, lives built on steady ground. Down here, sound carried differently. Every footstep echoed too long. Every silence felt personal. She sat cross-legged beside a concrete pillar, a small candle flickering at her feet. With a stick of charcoal, she sketched the outline of a bridge, arches rising, shadows falling. Her father's bridge, the one that never finished standing. A volunteer stopped by, his hood dripping with rain. Hey, Picasso, you're at it again. She smiled faintly. Keeps my hands busy. He crouched beside her, watching. You ever draw people? Sometimes. Draw yourself. She laughed. I don't remember what I look like when I'm not surviving. He handed her a cup of soup and nodded toward the city lights. You see that tower? The Ward building? They say the guy who owns it almost died last week. Big news. Maya kept drawing, the charcoal grinding harder against the wall. Yeah, she said softly. I heard. The man shrugged. World's crazy, huh? People up there crash, people down here clean up the mess. When he left, she stared at the tower, its windows glittering like cold stars, and felt something sharp twist in her chest. She reached into her pocket and pulled out the cufflink she'd kept since the night of the crash. It gleamed even in the dim candlelight, engraved with WG. Her father used to wear the same letters on his helmet. A memory came rushing in, her father's voice, warm and calm. Bridges are promises, Maya. They carry people who'll never know your name. That's the point. And then another memory. Her mother shouting in the rain outside the company gate, clutching papers, begging someone to listen. You killed him and buried the truth with concrete. Maya closed her eyes until the ache passed. Then she picked up the charcoal and wrote under her drawing. Every bridge carries a ghost. Across town, in his penthouse, Ethan stared at the same Ward Global Tower through his window, unable to sleep, unable to silence the sound of rain. He didn't know she was under that very bridge, keeping her father's ghost alive with broken charcoal and a single candle. Maya blew out the flame and whispered to the darkness. You can build 1,000 bridges, Ethan Ward, but you'll cross this one. Night again. The rain had stopped, but the city still glistened, washed clean of everything except its sins. Ethan's car idled beneath the bridge, headlights cutting through the damp air. He stepped out slowly, hands in his coat pockets, the smell of concrete and river rising to meet him. He'd been here before, 10 years ago, when the bridge was a construction site, when Victor Harlow's name was first written in an incident report and then buried under one word: accident. Now the site was different but familiar. Abandoned carts, blankets draped over railings, and near one of the pillars, the faint glow of a candle. Maya sat there, sketching on a slab of cardboard, her hair tied back with a string, the cufflink beside her like a talisman. Ethan hesitated, unsure how to begin. Do you always draw bridges? He asked softly. She startled, turning fast. For a moment, she didn't recognize him. He looked smaller than the man on the news. When she did, her expression hardened. What are you doing here? He took a step closer. You saved my life. She looked back at her drawing. You're welcome. I wanted to thank you properly. You already did, she said flatly. You let them erase me. The words hit harder than she intended. He flinched, realizing she knew. I didn't. Didn't what? She cut in. Didn't know they'd twist the story? Or didn't care enough to stop them? He looked at the cufflink on the ground. Where did you get that? Off your sleeve, she said. Souvenir. I thought it might remind you who built your empire. Her eyes met his. My father wore the same logo on his helmet the day your bridge collapsed. Silence. Only the sound of water dripping from the pillars. Ethan's face went pale. You're Victor Harlow's daughter. Was, she said quietly. He didn't make it past your deadlines. He ran a hand over his mouth, shaking his head. I didn't know the truth back then. They kept it from me. Her laugh was hollow. And that makes it better? No, he admitted. It makes me guilty in a different way. For a long moment, neither spoke. The city hummed faintly above them, a world built on the same kind of silence that had buried her father. Maya stood, picking up her sketchbook. Go home, Mr. Ward. You got your miracle. Leave the ghosts alone. She turned away, but he called after her. What do you want from me? She stopped. The truth. But I know you can't afford it. Headlights flashed suddenly from the road, a camera's glint in the dark. Someone had followed him. He turned toward the light, shielding his eyes. Who's there? Maya backed into the shadows, clutching her sketches. A car door slammed, and the light vanished. But she was already gone. Ethan stood alone under the bridge, heart pounding. On the wet ground, her candle flickered out. leaving only the cufflink glinting beside it. The news broke before sunrise. Screens across the city flashed with the same image. Ethan Ward standing beneath a bridge, his coat drenched, his face turned toward a girl half hidden in the shadows. The photo was grainy, but the headline was sharp enough to draw blood. Ward's savior is bridge collapse victim's daughter, cover-up alleged. By mid-morning, every outlet was running the story. Talk shows, blogs, late-night panels. Everyone had an opinion. Some called it poetic justice. Others called it manipulation. A few just called it unbelievable. Inside Ward Global's headquarters, Lydia Klein's voice cut through the chaos. Get the lawyers on standby. Lock down social media. We're not confirming a thing. She turned to Ethan. Do you understand what this means? They're painting you as a hypocrite. The man who preaches safety and hides behind PR. Ethan didn't answer. He was staring at the photo on the big screen. That frozen moment under the bridge, Maya's face half lit, half forgotten. She didn't want this, he murmured. Lydia snapped. Neither do you. So let's contain it. He looked up, eyes tired. Contain the truth? That's what we've been doing for 10 years. Lydia's expression hardened. You're not a martyr, Ethan. You're a CEO. Act like one. She left before he could reply, heels clicking like punctuation marks. Across town, in the shelter, Maya sat on the edge of her cot, the same photo on the TV above her. The volunteer turned down the volume. That's you, isn't it? She didn't answer. Reporters were already outside, shouting questions through the rain. One voice broke through the noise. Maya, do you forgive him? Did he pay you to save him? She flinched. What? Are you using this for money? For attention? She shoved past them, head down, but a camera flash caught her face. The image went viral in minutes. Homeless girl turned hero, or con artist. Maya ducked into an alley, breath uneven. The world she'd hidden from now wanted a piece of her. Meanwhile, Ethan stood at his office window, the city shrinking beneath him. He could hear his PR team arguing down the hall, how to spin it, how to bury it. But their voices faded under the memory of hers. You can't afford the truth. He turned from the skyline and said to no one, Then maybe it's time I start paying. He picked up his phone and called Andrew. Set a press conference, he said. No scripts. No filters. Andrew hesitated. They'll eat you alive, sir. Ethan's tone was calm. Then I'll finally know what hunger feels like. In a small diner, Maya stared at a newspaper left on the counter, the front page showing Ethan Ward's announcement. Tomorrow, I tell the truth. She exhaled slowly, whispering to herself. Then I'll know if he's still the man I saved. The press conference was held in the atrium of Ward Global, all glass, marble, and echoes. Cameras flashed like lightning as journalists packed the floor. The air buzzed with greed for scandal. Ethan Ward walked to the podium without a prepared statement. He looked smaller in person, paler, as though the light itself had judged him. Good morning, he began, voice steady but stripped of the practiced confidence people knew him for. I was supposed to read a statement my team prepared. I decided not to. He paused, letting the silence stretch. 10 years ago, one of my company's bridges collapsed. 6 workers died. Among them was a man named Victor Harlow. I signed a report that called it an accident. I told myself I didn't know the truth, that it wasn't my fault. It was easier that way. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Cameras clicked like nervous insects. Ethan continued. Last week, I nearly died in a crash. A young woman pulled me from the wreckage and gave me breath I didn't deserve. Her name is Maya Harlow, Victor's daughter. The world calls it irony. I call it mercy. He took a slow breath. If you want to talk about redemption, don't look at me. Look at her. And if you want to talk about accountability, that's on me. Lydia Klein stood frozen near the back, her phone buzzing nonstop. The company's stock was already plummeting. The screens on the wall showed red numbers cascading downward. But Ethan didn't stop. I built my empire on steel and silence, he said. Today, I'm returning both. Effective immediately, I resign as CEO of Ward Global. The company's assets will go into a trust for the victims' families. And as for the girl who saved me, if she wants nothing to do with me, I understand. His voice cracked slightly at the end, but he didn't look away from the cameras. This isn't damage control. This is confession. I owe her that. I owe a city that. I owe myself that. He stepped back, ignoring the chaos, reporters shouting, phones ringing, executives arguing. Across town, Maya watched from the shelter, the TV's blue light washing over her face. The other residents whispered, but she didn't move. On screen, Ethan Ward stood alone at the podium, flashbulbs exploding around him. "Why'd he do it?" someone asked. Maya didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the screen. When he said her name, her hand went to her pocket, the cufflink, warm from her skin. She whispered, "He finally built something honest." Outside, rain began again, soft and forgiving. In the city's heart, people looked up from their screens, from their desks, from their cynicism, just long enough to wonder what kind of world it would be if more people told the truth when it cost them everything. A journalist's voice echoed faintly from the broadcast. "Mr. Ward, do you expect forgiveness?" Ethan looked directly into the camera. "No, I expect to live without it." Months passed. The city had moved on, as cities do. New scandals, new headlines, new distractions. But under the noise, something quiet was happening. Near the river where the East Bridge once stood, construction had begun again. This time, no marketing banners, no slogans. Just a simple wooden sign at the gate. The Harlow Housing Project, built by hands, not excuses. Workers moved steadily across the site, their hard hats glinting in the sun. Among them, a young woman in a yellow vest crouched over a blueprint, charcoal smudged on her fingers. Maya Harlow. Her sketches, once done on scraps of cardboard under a bridge, were now being measured, printed, and built. The new structure wasn't just a bridge. It was part of a low-income housing complex designed for workers' families. She'd insisted on it. "I don't want a monument," she told the city council. "I want roofs that don't leak." Ethan Ward arrived quietly one afternoon, wearing a simple jacket, no security detail. Some workers recognized him, but didn't approach. He no longer looked like the man from the billboards. He looked human, smaller, calmer, real. He found Maya by the edge of the construction site, studying the foundations. "Solid work," he said softly. She didn't turn. "Let's hope it holds." He smiled faintly. "I'd bet my life on it." Again, for a long moment, they just stood there, the wind carrying the smell of wet cement and river mud. He finally said, "I didn't come to make peace." "I know," she replied. "I came to ask if I can help." She turned then, eyes steady. "You already are. Just by not being the man who built lies." He nodded. "I'm trying to learn." "Good," she said, handing him a folded paper, one of the original sketches. Lesson 1. Bridges need anchors, not walls. He unfolded it, a child's drawing of a bridge. Her handwriting, wobbly but proud. He looked up, and for the first time, she smiled. Not forgiveness. Not yet. But something close. That evening, the sun fell over the river, turning the new steel golden. Maya stood on the half-built walkway, watching cranes rise like slow-moving hope. Ethan joined the crew, carrying planks without ceremony. To anyone passing by, they looked like two ordinary workers finishing a shift. But the city would come to call that bridge something else, the one that healed a wound. When the last beam was set, Maya dipped her hand in wet cement and pressed her palm into it. Beside it, Ethan did the same. Two prints, one small, one large, side by side. No plaque, no press, just proof that sometimes redemption leaves fingerprints, not headlines. A year later, the river looked different. The bridge stretched clean and new across the water, its railings lined with wildflowers planted by local schoolchildren. Morning light spilled over the surface, turning the steel silver. Maya walked slowly across it, her boots leaving faint prints of dust. In her satchel, the old cufflink clinked softly, the last relic of a life that no longer ruled her. Down below, children laughed near the new housing complex. Families who'd once lived under tarps now hanging laundry from balconies. She stopped midway across the span and leaned on the railing, watching their reflections ripple in the river. For the first time in years, she didn't feel like a ghost. Behind her came a familiar voice. "You always get here early." Ethan Ward stood a few paces back, a coffee in each hand. He offered one to her. She accepted it wordlessly. They stood together in easy silence, watching the sun lift the fog. He looked older, gray at the temples, lines deeper around his eyes, but the heaviness was gone. "The city approved the final inspection," he said. "They'll open it next week." She nodded. "Your bridge passes." "Our bridge," he corrected gently. She smiled faintly. "You finally learned to share credit." He chuckled under his breath. "Took me almost losing everything to understand what was worth keeping." She turned to him. "And what's that?" He thought for a moment. "Breath. The kind you can take without guilt." They stood like that for a while. The hum of traffic above, the murmur of life below. Then Maya reached into her satchel and handed him the cufflink. "Time to let this go." He took it, staring at the tiny initials. "You sure?" She nodded. "I kept it as proof once. Now I don't need proof. I just need peace." He turned and tossed the cufflink into the river. It caught the light for an instant before disappearing beneath the water. As they walked back toward the city, Maya glanced at the inscription carved into the bridge's first pillar. "The Harlow Passage, for those who build what others walk upon." Her father's name, simple and small, gleamed beside it. A gentle breeze crossed the bridge, cool and alive. She closed her eyes and breathed deep. For the first time in a long time, she didn't taste smoke. Some debts aren't paid in money, or fame, or power, only in truth. Because the world doesn't change when the rich fall or the poor rise. It changes when someone finally sees the invisible and remembers to breathe. If this story moved you, subscribe for more human stories about truth, courage, and the quiet power of redemption.